Everything I have ever done, I have done for family. Hard to believe, perhaps, given what you see now. The cracked skin, the gentle hum beneath the ribs, the way my hands remember the incision even when I dream. None of it negates the motive. Every compromise, every quiet trade of doctrine for survival, every choice to set aside a sacred oath to purity. It was all for them. For those faces I could not bear to see lost. We were healers. That is how my family defined itself for 40 generations. Surgeons, physicians, combat medics, the Aurelians of Phoebe. Not saints, not martyrs, just professionals with hands that learned to steady and fingers that learned to find a pulse in the dark. Our name carried weight in hospital wings and at the wooden bench where ration lists were read. Respect, duty, sacrifice. Small things, but they tethered us to a purpose. Before the skies learned new colors and the earth forgot how to hold its shape, Phoebe was ordinary. Temperate groves, amber flow rivers when the light caught them, a world that paid its tithe and sent its young to die without complaint. We were not a forge world of industry, nor a shrine world of piety. We were a place that mattered in trivial ways. Pride came in the form of simple continuities, harvests, births, a child learning to fish, the sorts of things people write home about. When the invasion came, we were not ready. How could we be? Our maps listed pastures and orchards, not strategic caches. We had no rare minerals, no ancient artifacts that might have drawn a fleet of salvation. We were farmers and botanists pretending to be soldiers. I was a medic who preferred sutures to salvos. Yet when evacuation orders faltered and transports took the last of the able-bodied, someone had to tend the wounded. Who else but a surgeon would stay when the drums of retreat beat loudest? In the months that followed, our paradise transformed. Rivers congealed into something like mucus, a slow amber that no longer reflected skies but absorbed them. The gnarl wood groves wept black spores instead of sap. The insects came. No, they did not arrive. They bloomed. Evolution was compressed into a fevered week. Creatures shaped themselves anew, sprouting wings with impossible joints, mandibles that hummed when they ate, metabolisms that burned with a strange, radiant heat. I watched it all as a physician watches a novel pathology. Clinical curiosity prickled where most felt only horror. There is a strange beauty in transformation, if one can call it that. The older one becomes, the more one sees pattern in decay. The trees had not died, they had changed function. The ground no longer pretended to be the earth we remembered. It now cultivated. Nature, indifferent and methodical, adapted. We alone mourned the loss as though the old ways were owed to us. I documented everything. The habit is preternatural for a clinician. Observe, record, hypothesize. The fungal blooms that sealed wounds faster than any coterie we had known. The larval secretions that promoted cellular regeneration so that severed tissue fused back together in hours. And the hive patterns that arose beneath the skin. Not rash, not tumor, but geometry. Hexagons. Perfect, seamless, like some mathematician's fever dream placed beneath the dermis. Early symptoms were mild and with an insidious politeness. A slight yellowing of the sclera, a subcutaneous swelling dismissed as edema. Then the hexagons would map themselves, faint at first, like an artist sketching a lattice, until they took on structure, channels through which tiny, surgical insects burrowed with unnerving precision. They followed neural pathways as if they had read anatomy before they came into being. Eggs were laid in the frontal and temporal lobes. Cognition receded in stair steps. First abstraction, then memory, then names. Language fewer and fewer degrees from song. But watch closely and you will see what was gained. Nerve endings intensified before they degraded. The system flooded with a constant, low-level neurotransmitter cascade, serotonin, dopamine, a chemical lullaby. The afflicted became perpetually drowsy, a chronic, pleasant haze from which they rarely stirred in alarm. Bone density increased, not by rumor but by measurement, and by 77% in subjects I could quantify. The epidermis was replaced by a waxy substance that shrugged off laser burns and resisted common toxins. Survivors, if one can call them that, endured for decades, sometimes contexts we regarded as centuries. They functioned. They obeyed simple commands. They sang in their own way and continued to work the fields. I presented my work to the remaining medical board because I believed in duty. A physician must share knowledge. I brought Subject 7 to demonstrate. Clark Kellis, formerly administrative staff, eyes hollow but alive, humming faintly from the life inside him. His skull had expanded to make room for the hive structure. There was a constant amber weep from what had been his tear ducts. I demonstrated how, given a second, Kellis could regenerate a severed hand. They called me Monster. There is a memory I cannot scrub. Physician Major Aldona, famed for steely nerves, turned green and clutched the edge of the bench and vomited. Others recoiled at the sight of a humming rib cage, at the idea of amber fluid-altering tissue. They dressed me in words, heretic, butcher, and expelled me from our institution as if by excommunication they could excise me from the species. I do not speak of this to seek pity. The work continued because it could not stop. My new colleagues were not men of letters or titles. They were servants of the Grandfather. Their formal training was lacking. Their fascination was not. They arrived hungry. Dozens of eyes, multiple hands, an enthusiasm that no medical graduate could feign. They had a devotion that was not sterile ceremony, but practical curiosity. Together we refined protocols. We accepted standards where possible. The restraints we used were fungal-grown leather, pre-perforated and surprisingly resilient. The spores in the weave secrete a mild anesthetic. They bond with skin. The patient often reports the sensation as a warm embrace. You are very quiet. That is unusual. Normally the afflicted scream or pray. Prayer is interesting on Phoebe now. The old gods were abandoned by empires and armies. Some call upon an emperor who left them. Others speak to nothing and still find comfort. The Grandfather, however, remains. At least he is consistent. At least he changes us with his touch. I wish you to understand the procedure as I do, not to frighten, but to educate. There is a rhythm to it, a choreography that must be observed for the body to accept the change. First, the injection. Thean metamorphosis. Strain 327. I call it my masterwork. It is a brew of bacterial scaffolds, larval catalysts, and a curated fungal strain that primes the lymphatic system for colonization. The dosage is precise. Too little, and the hive flares and fails, leaving necrosis. Too much, and the host succumbs in convulsions. Most survive, but survival is not an abstract measure. It is a function of physiology, age, and the mercies of chance. Once administered, warmth spreads from the site like a tide. Lymph nodes swell until they feel like fruit under the skin, processing and distributing the inoculum. Within 24 hours, patches of necrotized tissue appear, cultivation sites for secondary organisms. The prefrontal cortex begins to atrophy. You will lose fear in segments, a curiosity that can alarm friends and family. Within a week, memories recede. Within a month, names dissolve into the fog. But why cling to the past when the body remembers what matters? Structure, function, the ability to endure. I have catalogued each stage, for what else can a physician do but record? The swaiting wound that blossoms at the base of clavicle, the emergent parasite that shapes cartilage with patient delicacy, the way the waxy epidermis sets like enamel. There are moments of grotesque beauty. Crystalline growths in lung tissue refract ambient light into patterns like stained glass, and in the hush of night, Wind through a ruined larynx will make music that sounds not unhappy. You will remain conscious for much of this. I find the best outcomes when neural activity is present. Pain, we manage with modified anesthetics derived from local fauna, something that liquefies from inside while bathing neural receptors in endorphins. It is an elegant cruelty, conscious yet comforted. Many die in tranquil ecstasy. Others adapt and rise to new life forms. The goal is not annihilation, it is adaptation. Do not misunderstand me. The politics of medicine remain murder. Promises made in clean rooms unravel in the swamp of survival. There are deals struck with gardeners for specimens, bargains with scavengers for parts. My title as a member of a Phoebe medical board once mattered. Now, serving the grandfather or serving some distant bureaucracy are less different than one might think. Both require compromise. Family remains the lodestar. My wife had the same look you wear now when I told her what I intended for our children. Marcus, dear boy, sprouted mandibles that click in the dark and help him peel the fungus from cultivated beds. Eliza's skin glows with colonies that light small workspaces like bioluminescent lamps. She hums and helps in the lab. They are strange to other eyes, but they keep to the family and to the work. That is enough. The staff asks if we are cruel. I ask them whether the alternative is kinder. Letting children starve, leaving a village to rot because their bodies failed our arbitrary standard of pure. We make hard choices and we wrap them in the language of progress. It comforts us to say we do what is necessary. There is a tenderness in these labs that surprises newcomers. Hands that were once quick with scalpels now tend to broodling nests with the same careful devotion. We clean the chambers. We whisper to the laurel cultures as if to infants. The grandfather's devotees are not all monsters. Many are caretakers in a new, incomprehensible way. They read charts. They note the rhythm of a hive's hum. They watch the amber weep and interpret it like scripture. They have names too, minor, practical, and often unpleasant, but names nonetheless. As I prepare the next vial for you, I confess a scientist's eagerness. There is a joy in observation that can alarm the uninitiated. I find case studies fascinating, not because they are cold data, but because they are living narratives that tell us how a species might survive an epochal change. To create a lineage that can thrive here is to secure the future for those we love. This room is warm. The restraints are placed with an artisan's care. You are noisy with the small human insistences of breath and doubt. That is acceptable. The spores in the leather will dull your anxiety. The paralytic agent I have refined reaches the vocal cords quickly. Your words will soften into something nearly like song. They will not stop your awareness. I prefer that. The transformation is a covenant, and covenants are better kept with eyes open. When the metamorphosis completes, there is always a pause, a silence heavy with a life that has been altered but not extinguished. The humming increases. Amber beadlets collect at tear ducts. Limbs flex with new capacities. The patient smiles sometimes, as if remembering a tune they learned in dreams. They will not be the people you once knew. They will be the future. Everything I do for family. That is not an excuse. It is an explanation. It is the logic by which I rationalize nights in the lab and the uneasy trade of human certainty for biological possibility. You will understand, if not now, then perhaps in the slow unspooling of time that follows. You will become part of something larger, not merely my family, but the family of our world as it remakes itself in the grandfather's image. We begin with the first injection. You will feel a warmth like stepping into a bath. I promise you there will be no sudden pain. There will be a long, slow unmooring from hunger, cold, and fear, and a settling into endless, drowsy contentment. It is, in its way, mercy. On Phoebe, the good doctor's work continues. Patient by patient, family by family, the transformation threads us into the new fabric of this world. It is messy, it is tender, it is necessary. If you find these tales to your taste, perhaps press like, perhaps subscribe. Small comforts for the storyteller who tries to make sense of darkness. Good lad.